Finally, she is a master of the written word. John Yang talks to the director of a new documentary about taking the power of a Nobel laureate from the page to the big screen. It's part of our Canvas series on art and culture.
Toni Morrison's readers know the power of her written words, and now a new documentary gives film audiences the opportunity to hear the power of her spoken words. In Toni Morrison, The Pieces I Am, she talks about being a working single mother, the disdainful attitude of critics toward her early works, and the joy of winning the Nobel Prize for Literature. Timothy Greenfield-Sanders is the director of the film, which is playing nationwide. Thanks for joining us. There's so much of the delight of this film is just Toni Morrison speaking directly to the viewers. You've worked with her, you've known her. Was there a moment when you thought, this is what I want to do and this is how I want to do it?
You know, I've known Toni for 38 years. And I think the Toni that comes through in this film is the one I know very well. In a way, there's there's Toni Morrison, there's Chloe Walford, her real name. And this is a bit of Chloe here, a really intimate look and a feel from her.
She talks in the film about the reaction to her second novel, Sula. She's a Pulitzer Prize winner now, she's a Nobel Prize winner, but at the time, the New York Times was a little condescending. They said she was too good a writer to restrict herself to the provincial world of black characters. Yeah. How did she deal with that? How did she talk about that? You know,
she was appalled, of course, and today we read that and it's just so shocking, but in those days, that was, in the New York Times, a kind of perfectly normal thing to say by a reviewer. And you know, Toni's whole mission really has been to kind of eliminate the white gaze, as she calls it. And she talks about the little white man sitting on your shoulder.
Actually, we want to play that clip.
I didn't want to speak for black people. I wanted to speak to and to be among. It's us. So the first thing I had to do was to eliminate the white gaze. Jimmy Baldwin used to talk about that. The little white man that sits on your shoulder and checks out everything you do and say. So to knock him off. And, you know, you're free. Now I own the world. I mean, I can write about anything. To anyone, for anyone.
She also talked about writers, black writers, Ralph Ellison, Frederick Douglass, who wrote assuming their audiences, their readers were white.
Right.
She mentioned James Baldwin there. Were there other writers who she felt did what she was doing, got that white gaze off her shoulder?
I think that there weren't really. You know, when Toni started to write in the late 60s and her first book was published in 1970, there was really no writing like that. She just really broke the canon in a sense.
And I have to ask, I mean, she talks about she didn't want the white gaze looking at what she was doing, but she chose to have her story told by a white man.
You know, we have a long friendship, and I'm honored, of course, that she chose me to do it and allowed me to do it. Toni is really a very private person, and when I first asked her a few years ago if she would let me do a documentary about her, she didn't say no. And I knew that was a sort of a yes. I took that as a yes.
How did the relationship start? How did you first meet her?
She came into my studio in 1981 smoking a pipe for a portrait for the Soho News. And I was a very young photographer, and I had read The Bluest Eye, and we kind of had a friendship starting there. And then over the years, I became her go-to photographer. I did a lot of her book covers and press, and she was the inspiration for a whole series I did on identity called The Blacklist.
When she won the Nobel Prize, you quoted a critic who you didn't identify in the film, but I went back and found it was Stanley Crouch, saying, "I hope that this prize inspires her to write better books."
Well, it's appalling. It's appalling. I didn't put his name in or you know, kind of identify him because I don't want to give him any more agency than he has. You know, it's about Toni, and what I was trying to show there was how disgusting some of the remarks were about this black woman who had just won the Nobel Prize in Literature, and here were the kind of remarks about it in the Washington Post.
There was also some things that I didn't know that some people may not know. For instance, her career as an editor at Random House, and the way she helped other black writers find their voices.
Muhammad Ali published his great book, The Greatest, his book. Toni Cade Bambara, Angela Davis, so many people that were kind of marginalized, and Toni said, no, 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 this is going to be opened up here. We're going to bring in other voices. And she really was kind of the scholarship that we read today in schools. Really, the scholarship we read in schools today came out of a lot of Random House publications.
And she also talked about negotiating that world of publishing, which is largely white males, as a black woman raising 2 children on her own.
She says something like, it wasn't even interesting. I was more interesting than they were.
And wasn't afraid to show it.
Exactly. And, you know, that confidence is something I remember feeling from her when I first met her, that there's this kind of amazing person there that has always felt secure in who she is.
So the people who have read Toni Morrison's words can now hear Toni Morrison's words. The film is Toni Morrison, The Pieces I Am. Timothy Greenfield-Sanders, the director. Thank you very much.
Thank you.